for exposing my dad after he said I was too simple to inherit Grandpa's estate? I'm Savannah, 29, and being Martin and Elaine's younger daughter has always felt like playing a game where Caroline got the rulebook, and I got blamed for not knowing how to win. Caroline is 32, polished in that effortless way people just love to compliment, and I've always been the one who remembers where the spare keys are, who notices when the fridge filter needs changing, and who still somehow gets called irresponsible at Sunday dinners. For most of my life, Caroline wasn't just my older sister. She was the family headline. Caroline did well in a way people could photograph. She smiled easily, knew how to stand in pictures, remembered names when important people were listening, and could make a late arrival seem like a grand entrance. If she forgot something, she was overwhelmed. If she lost something, she had too much on her plate. If she hurt someone's feelings, she was stressed. If I asked one question too many, I was difficult. If I remembered something nobody else had, I was keeping score. If I stayed quiet, I was sulking. It sounds dramatic written like that, but it didn't start with big things. It started with tiny moments that trained everyone in my family where to look and what to ignore. When Mom turned 55, Caroline forgot to order the cake she had promised to handle. She called me from her car, laughing like it was adorable. Can you save me? The bakery closes in 20 minutes, and Mom will get that wounded look on her face if there's no cake. I ordered the cake, paid the rush fee, picked it up, and got powdered sugar on my black pants in the parking lot trying to keep the box from sliding off the passenger seat. At dinner, Mom cried because Caroline had remembered her favorite lemon filling. Caroline hugged Mom and said, "Of course I remembered." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Caroline caught my eye over Mom's shoulder and gave me a tiny smile that said, "Don't be weird." Another time, Dad ignored an insurance notice for Grandpa Henry's lake house because he said it was probably junk mail. I noticed the second notice on the counter under a grocery ad. The payment was late enough that the policy was about to lapse. I called, got the balance, paid it from my savings, and emailed Dad the confirmation. He responded with one line, "You should have asked before involving yourself." 2 weeks later at dinner, he told Uncle Rob, "I had to stay on top of the lake house insurance. You know how these companies are. They'll cancel you if you blink." Caroline nodded seriously, as if she had personally fought the insurance company in hand-to-hand combat. I said, "I paid that." Dad looked at me like I had burped during a prayer. "Savannah, don't make everything about credit. That was my place in the family. I wasn't the family disaster. I was the person they called when the disaster needed to be cleaned up quietly." I loved Caroline when we were younger in that uncomplicated way younger sisters do. I copied her handwriting. I borrowed her lip gloss and pretended she didn't notice. I sat on her bedroom floor while she tried on outfits, hoping she would ask what I thought. I believed that one day when we were both adults, she would look at me and say, "You know, they were too hard on you." Instead, she learned that my being smaller in the family made her look taller. By the time Grandpa Henry got sick, the pattern was already set. Dad was the authority. Mom was the soft voice smoothing over whatever Dad said. Caroline was the proof that the family had produced someone impressive. And I was the loose end. Grandpa was the only one who seemed to see the arrangement clearly. He was Dad's father, and he had a way of watching people that made them either straighten up or leave the room. He didn't talk over everyone. He didn't need to. When he wanted you to listen, he'd fold his hands on the table and wait until the noise died down around him. One afternoon, when he was still strong enough to sit at the kitchen table with his reading glasses low on his nose, he slid a paper folder toward me. "Read that renewal notice for me, kid," he said. I glanced toward Dad, who was on the phone in the next room, using his loud voice that meant he wanted the whole house to know he was handling business. "Dad said he has it," I told Grandpa. Grandpa snorted. "Your father says a lot of things with his chest. Read it anyway." So I did. It was the lake house insurance, and there was a change in the coverage that would have left the dock and detached garage barely covered. I read the fine print twice because I thought I must be misunderstanding it. Grandpa watched my face. "What do you see?" I told him. He leaned back, looked toward the hallway where Dad was still booming into the phone, and said, "People mistake quiet for empty. Don't let them do that to you." That sentence stayed with me longer than most compliments I had ever gotten from my own parents. Grandpa Henry had 3 sentimental things everyone cared about. The first was the lake house. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, in the way old family places become ours even when they smell like cedar, dust, and damp towels. It had a screen door that slapped shut too hard, a kitchen table with knife marks from years of corn on the cob, and a porch where Grandpa used to drink coffee before anyone else woke up. The second was his vintage car. It was a deep blue old thing he had restored slowly over the years, piece by piece. He called it the Lady, like it was a person who deserved courtesy. Nobody drove it without him sitting in the passenger seat, making nervous little noises. The third was the family trust. Nobody explained it clearly to me for a long time. They talked around it like it was the weather. Dad used words like legacy and stewardship. Mom used words like fairness and peace. Caroline used words like future and stability, usually right after she said she didn't care about money. The first time I asked Mom when we were all going to sit down and review Grandpa's trust documents, she lowered her voice like I had asked where the bodies were buried. We were standing at her kitchen counter. She was slicing strawberries into a glass bowl, and I was drying dishes. Caroline had just left her engagement ring pictures open on Mom's tablet, and Mom was still glowing from showing them to Aunt Lisa. "Savannah," Mom said softly, "don't embarrass yourself over money." I stopped drying the plate in my hand. Asking what a legal document says isn't begging. Mom sighed. "You know your father will explain things when it's time." "He doesn't explain things. He announces them after the decision is already made. Tonight is not the night for that tone. It's 2 in the afternoon." She gave me the tired look she saved only for me, as if stating facts was a personality flaw. "Caroline has a lot on her plate with the engagement dinner coming up. Please don't bring nervous energy into it." Caroline walked in right then, barefoot, scrolling on her phone. She looked up just in time to hear the end. "What's Save nervous about now?" Mom said. "Nothing," I said. "The trust." Caroline's smile didn't disappear. It sharpened. "Save, not everything has to become a thing. A trust is already a thing. That's the point." She laughed like I had proven something about myself. "You take everything so seriously." I put the plate away. "Only the things people expect me to fix after they break them." Caroline rolled her eyes and walked out, but I noticed she didn't look confused. She looked annoyed that I was asking in front of Mom. That was the first time I started saving everything on purpose. I had always kept receipts because nobody believed me without them. Payment confirmations, screenshots, emails, pictures of notices before they could vanish from the counter. It wasn't paranoia at first. It was self-defense. When Dad asked me to come by and sign a few routine estate papers about 3 months after Grandpa died, I asked him to email them first. He called instead. "Savannah, do you need to make everything difficult? I just want to read them. They're standard. Then they should be easy to send." He exhaled hard into the phone. "This is why people don't include you in adult conversations. You turn simple things into accusations. What are the papers for?" "The lake house and a few trust cleanup items." "What kind of cleanup items?" "My God, you sound like a lawyer." "Then send them to the actual lawyer." He hung up. 5 minutes later, Caroline texted me. "Don't start drama with Dad. He's trying to keep Grandpa's wishes moving." I stared at the message for a while before answering. "What wishes?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Save, please. You know what I mean." I didn't know what she meant. Or maybe I did, and that was worse. A few days before Caroline's engagement dinner, I got a call from a number I recognized from Grandpa's paperwork. Mr. Harlan, Grandpa's estate attorney, had a voice like crisp paper. Calm, dry, and impossible to rush. I missed the call because I was carrying groceries in from my car. He left a voicemail. "Savannah, this is Walter Harlan. Do not sign any transfer documents related to the lake house, the vehicle, or trust distributions until we speak in person. I have reason to believe certain announcements may be made prematurely. If necessary, I may attend the dinner on Saturday. Please save this message." I stood in my doorway with a bag cutting into my wrist and listened to it twice. Then I saved it. Then I transcribed it and emailed the transcript to myself. That might sound excessive unless you've spent 29 years in a family where people deny things they said while the words are still warm in the room. That night, Caroline texted me. Try not to make tomorrow about your feelings. I replied, what exactly do you think I'm going to do? She sent back a laughing emoji. I mean it. This dinner matters. Just smile and be normal. Normal meant quiet. Normal meant grateful. Normal meant taking whatever shape made Caroline shine brighter. On the night of the dinner, Mom texted me 3 times before I even left. Please wear something nice. Please don't bring up Grandpa's estate. Please remember this is about Caroline and Adam. Adam was Caroline's fiancé. He was polite in that careful way people are when they've only seen the shiny version of a family. His parents were coming along with his sister, a few of their family friends, our cousins, Aunt Lisa, Uncle Rob, and people my parents like to call close family, even if I only saw them at holidays and major events. When I walked in, the room looked less like an engagement dinner, and more like a magazine shoot about families who never raise their voices. There were white flowers in low glass vases, printed menu cards at every seat, framed photos of Caroline and Adam on the dessert table, and little place cards in Mom's handwriting. My place card was near the end of the table, between a cousin I barely knew and one of Dad's golf friends. Caroline was near the middle, glowing under every light in the room. Adam sat beside her, his hand resting over hers. Mom floated around in a pale dress, touching shoulders and refilling glasses as if hospitality could cover tension like a tablecloth. Dad stood near his chair with a folded, printed speech in one hand. I noticed the yellow highlighted lines before I noticed his expression. He looked excited. Not emotional. Not proud. Excited. Mom caught me looking at the speech and came over quickly. Tonight is about your sister, she whispered, squeezing my wrist. Just be happy for her. I gently pulled my hand back. I can be happy for her without disappearing. Her mouth tightened. Please, Savannah. I just want one night where everyone can be happy. That sentence usually meant one thing. I was expected to absorb something so nobody else had to feel uncomfortable. Dinner started pleasantly enough. There was salad I barely tasted. Chicken everyone said was moist because nobody knew what else to say about it, and champagne glasses that kept getting filled. Caroline laughed with Adam's mother. Dad told a story about Caroline winning a school award when she was 12. Mom dabbed at her eyes like the memory had surprised her, even though I'd heard that story at least 50 times. I stayed quiet and watched. I watched Dad pat the pocket where he had tucked the speech. I watched Caroline glance at him, then at me, then away. I watched Mom look toward the doorway every time someone arrived, like she was checking who might witness what came next. Aunt Lisa arrived late, which was normal for her, but she looked distracted. She hugged Mom, then leaned toward me and whispered, "You okay?" That surprised me. Aunt Lisa loved family unity, and for years she had accepted the version of me Mom served at holidays. Sensitive Savannah. Jealous Savannah. Savannah who needed reassurance and still complained. I'm fine, I said. She looked unconvinced, but before she could say anything else, Dad stood and tapped his knife against his glass. The room settled. Dad unfolded his speech. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began, his voice warm and practiced. There are moments in a family's life when you realize the next generation is not just growing up, but stepping into responsibility. Tonight we celebrate Caroline and Adam, but we also celebrate legacy. That word made my stomach tighten. Caroline lowered her eyes modestly. Adam smiled. His mother put a hand on her chest. Dad continued. Caroline has always been the daughter who never made us worry. Focused, capable, steady. She has carried herself with grace, and she understands what it means to honor where she came from. A few people nodded. One cousin raised her glass halfway, thinking the toast was almost over. It wasn't. As many of you know, my father, Henry, cared deeply about family property. The lake house, the car, the trust, those were never just assets to him. They were symbols of our family's story. And after careful thought, I've decided that Caroline will be receiving the lake house as she and Adam begin their life together. She will also be entrusted with Henry's vintage car, and she will take a central role in guiding the family trust forward. For 1 second, the room did what rooms do when they don't know if something is normal. It paused. Then Adam's father started clapping because he didn't know any better. A few others joined in. Mom smiled too hard. Caroline pressed her fingertips to her lips like this was an emotional surprise, but her shoulders relaxed in relief. I didn't move. Dad turned slightly toward me, and something in his face changed. The generosity disappeared. The performance sharpened. Now every family has different strengths, he said. Some people are built to carry a legacy, and some people need help carrying a grocery bag. There it was. A small burst of awkward laughter came from the far end of the table. Someone coughed. One of my cousins looked down at his plate. Aunt Lisa's face went still. Dad smiled as if he had made a harmless joke. Savannah will always be taken care of in a way that matches what she can realistically handle. But Caroline has earned the kind of start every parent dreams of giving a child. My ears were ringing, but my hands stayed steady in my lap. Mom reached under the table and squeezed my wrist. "Please don't make a scene," she whispered. Caroline leaned toward me with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Save," she murmured. "It's not personal. Dad just knows what each of us can handle." I looked at her, then at Dad's speech on the table beside his plate. He had set it down, highlighted lines facing up. I didn't cry. I did something more useful. I listened. Dad kept talking, using words like responsibility, gratitude, continuity, and respect. He made it sound as if Grandpa had personally whispered instructions into his ear from beyond the grave. He made Caroline sound like the chosen guardian of everything sacred. He made me sound like a dependent adult who should be grateful for crumbs shaped like concern. While everyone watched him, I picked up my phone under the table and took a picture of his printed speech. The angle was bad, but it was clear enough. The highlighted line about me needing help with a grocery bag was visible. Then I looked around the room. I wanted to remember who laughed. Not because I planned revenge. Because I had finally learned that when people rewrite a room, you need proof of who was standing in it. When Dad finished, Caroline stood and hugged him. Mom cried. Adam looked pleased but faintly confused, like he was still processing the trust part. His parents smiled politely. Aunt Lisa didn't clap. I stood carefully and reached for my purse. Caroline's smile dropped. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said. Mom's voice came out sharp under the softness. "Savannah." Dad frowned. "Sit down. This family doesn't need a performance tonight." I almost laughed. He had just performed a public inheritance fantasy with me as the punchline, but me leaving quietly was the performance. "I'm not performing," I said. "I'm removing myself from one." I had taken 3 steps toward the hallway when the front door opened and Aunt Lisa appeared with Mr. Harlan behind her. He was wearing a dark suit and carrying a sealed folder from his office, the kind with a red string closure and a printed label across the front. He looked exactly as calm as he had sounded on the voicemail. The room went silent in that immediate, electric way a room goes silent when a stranger enters a family fight with paperwork. Aunt Lisa looked at Dad. "Martin, he asked to be here." Dad's face tightened. "Lisa, what is this?" Mr. Harlan stepped forward. "Good evening. I apologize for interrupting a private celebration. Before anyone celebrates a transfer, we need to establish who actually has authority over those assets." Dad let out a humorless laugh. "This is a family matter." Mr. Harlan didn't blink. "No, Martin. This is a legal one." You could feel the table shift without anyone moving. Forks rested on plates. Champagne bubbles kept rising in glasses nobody touched. Caroline stared at the sealed folder. Not at Mr. Harlan. Not at Dad. Not at me. At the folder. That was when I knew. She wasn't surprised. She was afraid. Dad stepped away from the table. "Walter, I don't know what you think you heard, but this is not the time. I heard you promised the lake house, Henry's vehicle, and a central role in the family trust to Caroline," Mr. Harlan said. "Is that accurate?" Dad's jaw shifted. "I spoke in broad family terms. You named specific assets. I was explaining what my father would have wanted." Mr. Harlan's expression stayed neutral. "Henry wrote down what he wanted. That's why we're here." Mom stood halfway then sat again. "Can we please do this later?" "Elaine," Aunt Lisa said quietly, "did you know this was coming?" Mom's eyes filled. "I just wanted peace." I almost closed my eyes. There it was again. Peace somehow always required my silence and everyone else's comfort. Dad pointed toward the hallway. "Savannah, sit down. You don't understand what's happening. Something in me went very still. For years, that sentence had been a cage. You don't understand. You're too sensitive. You're making it worse. You're confused. Mr. Harlan looked at me. Savannah, this folder is for you. Henry instructed that it be delivered if an unauthorized transfer announcement was made, or if you were pressured to sign documents without review. He placed it in front of me on the edge of the dining table. Nobody breathed for a second. Dad scoffed. This is absurd. Savannah doesn't understand adult paperwork. I put my hand on the folder. Then it should be easy to explain why my name is on the oversight clause. Dad's face changed so quickly that even Adam noticed. Caroline looked down. Mom pressed her fingers to her mouth. I untied the red string. Inside were labeled tabs. Trust summary. Henry letter. Vehicle title. Lake house insurance. Ledger. Communications. Transfer restrictions. Voicemail transcript. The first page was a plain English summary attached to formal legal pages. Grandpa had known us well enough to make things impossible to bury under jargon. My hand shook a little then. Not from fear. From the force of holding proof after years of being told my memory was the problem. Mr. Harlan addressed the room, not dramatically, not loudly, just clearly. Henry's trust was revised before his death. The lake house, the vintage vehicle, and certain trust distributions are protected assets. Martin does not have unilateral authority to transfer them. Caroline has a designated share, but that share carries conditions. There are disclosure requirements. No pressure transfers and no sale or retitling of sentimental assets without proper approval. Savannah has oversight and veto authority over specific protected assets. Adam's mother said softly, "Veto authority?" Mr. Harlan nodded. "Correct." Dad laughed again, but this time it sounded thin. My father was old and being influenced. Henry was evaluated as competent, Mr. Harlan said. The revision was witnessed, notarized, and reviewed in detail. Henry did not leave this to interpretation. Caroline's voice came out too bright. Okay, but this really doesn't need to happen right now. It's my engagement dinner. I looked at her. You were fine with it happening right now when Dad was giving you the lake house. Her cheeks flushed. That's not fair. No, I said. It wasn't. Dad slammed his palm lightly on the table. Not hard enough to look violent. Just hard enough to remind everyone he expected obedience. This is about respect. Caroline understands responsibility in a way Savannah never has. Mr. Harlan started to speak, but I raised one hand. He stopped. That mattered to me. He had brought legal authority, but I wasn't going to let him become the rescuer in the story. I had been in this room my whole life. I could speak in it. I opened the lake house insurance tab and pulled out the notice from the year Dad ignored the payment. Behind it was my payment confirmation and the email I had sent him. This is the insurance lapse Dad called junk mail, I said. My voice sounded so calm it almost didn't feel like mine. I paid it before coverage ended. If I hadn't, the lake house would have been uninsured during the storm that damaged the dock 2 weeks later. Uncle Rob leaned forward. Wait, I remember that storm. Martin said he handled the claim. He handled the claim after I kept the policy alive. Dad's face reddened. You were reimbursed. 5 months later, after Grandpa asked why the check hadn't been sent, I pulled out the next page. This is the email Grandpa sent Dad afterward. He wrote, Savannah caught what you dismissed. Stop treating her attention like interference. Aunt Lisa looked at Dad. You never mentioned that. Dad snapped. Because it wasn't relevant. It became relevant when you called me too simple for real responsibility, I said. The room was dead quiet now. The kind of quiet that made every rustle of paper sound loud. I moved to the ledger tab. These are unpaid property fees I flagged. These are the corrected filing dates. This is the bank envelope with check copies. This is the old car title paperwork with Grandpa's name still attached, and the restriction note nobody wanted to read because it made Dad's plan inconvenient. Caroline's fiancé, Adam, picked up his water glass and put it down without drinking. His sister looked at Caroline, then at the folder. Caroline forced a small laugh. Savannah, this is insane. You've been sitting on a scrapbook of grievances. No, I said. I've been sitting on records. There's a difference. Dad turned to Mr. Harlan. You had no right to bring this here. Henry's instruction was specific, Mr. Harlan replied. If there was a public attempt to pressure Savannah or misrepresent protected assets, the correction was not to be private. Mom whispered. Henry wouldn't want everyone fighting. For the first time all night, my voice broke just a little. Grandpa hated fighting. He hated lying more. I opened the communications tab. Caroline's posture changed. It was tiny, but I saw it. Her shoulders pulled in. Her fingers tightened around her napkin. I hadn't planned to use that tab unless they forced me. Some part of me still wanted to spare her. That was the pathetic little sister in me, still hoping there was a line Caroline wouldn't cross. Then Dad said, "This is what she does. She hoards little things, twists them, and waits for a chance to punish people. Caroline has always moved forward. Savannah just resents being left behind." So I took out the screenshots. "This is from Caroline to Dad," I said. "Timestamp 3 weeks ago." Caroline stood. "Do not read my private messages." I looked at her. "You sent them about me to pressure me into signing over protected assets. Privacy isn't a shield for that." Mr. Harlan said evenly, "These were provided during a legal review after concerns about coercion were raised. I read only what mattered. Savannah won't understand the paperwork anyway. If we announce it publicly, she'll look jealous if she objects." The room seemed to tilt. Adam turned toward Caroline. "You said that." Caroline opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "It was out of context." I slid the screenshot across the table toward him. "The context is under it. Dad should make it part of the engagement toast so she can't ruin it without looking unstable." Adam didn't pick up the paper right away. He just stared at it. Caroline's eyes flashed at me. "Are you seriously doing this at my engagement dinner?" I felt something old and loyal in me finally step back. "You were fine letting Dad humiliate me in front of everyone," I said. "Don't ask for privacy now that the truth embarrasses you." Mom started crying. Not loud, not messy, just enough to pull attention. It was one of her oldest habits. When things got too direct, she became fragile and waited for everyone to soften around her. "Savannah," she said, "please. I was trying to keep this family together." I turned to the next page. "This is your text to me the day after I asked about the trust. Please don't ruin Caroline's moment by turning Grandpa's wishes into a money discussion. And this one after Mr. Harlan called me. Whatever he told you. Do not bring legal stress to the dinner. Your father is trying to do something beautiful for your sister." Mom looked smaller than I had ever seen her. "I didn't know all the details," she whispered. Mr. Harlan said, "Elaine, you were copied on the summary of restricted assets." Aunt Lisa slowly turned toward her sister. "Elaine." Mom wiped her cheek. "I knew there were restrictions. I just didn't know Martin would say it like that." I laughed once. It came out ugly and tired. "So the problem wasn't the lie. It was the phrasing." "That's not what I meant." "It never is." Dad pointed at me. "Enough. You are embarrassing everyone who has ever tried to help you." That hit the room differently than he expected. Because by then the evidence was in front of everyone, and the old script no longer fit. Aunt Lisa stood. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. "Martin, answer the question. Did you know you could not promise those assets tonight?" Dad's mouth tightened. "This is complicated." "No," Aunt Lisa said. "The question is simple. Did you know?" He looked toward Mom, then Caroline, then the table. He didn't answer. Aunt Lisa turned to Caroline. "Did you know there were restrictions?" Caroline's chin trembled, but she said nothing. That silence did more damage than any confession could have. One of my cousins whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else pushed back from the table. Adam's mother sat very straight, her face no longer politely confused. Adam looked like a man recalculating not just one evening but the person beside him. Caroline finally snapped. "I knew Dad was trying to fix things. I knew Grandpa wanted the family taken care of. I didn't know Savannah would turn it into some revenge fantasy." "A toast does not transfer title," Mr. Harlan said. It was such a simple sentence that it cut through all of Dad's fog about legacy and respect. Dad rounded on him. You have turned my father's estate against his own family. No, Mr. Harlan said. Henry protected his estate from being used against one member of his family. I picked up Grandpa's letter but didn't open it yet. I could see his handwriting through the thin paper. My throat tightened too much. Instead, I closed the folder halfway and looked at Dad. You called me too simple to carry the family name. Turns out I was the only one reading the paperwork. Nobody laughed at that. Dad's face went cold. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said. I think it makes me finished. Finished with what? Having private conversations that become public lies. Mom stood and came around the table, reaching for my arm. Can we talk in the hallway? Just us. I stepped back. Her hand hung in the air. No, you don't get private access to my guilt anymore. Her face crumpled. Savannah, you can keep calling me the embarrassment, I said. Just don't ask me to keep hiding yours. Mr. Harlan slid one of his cards across the table toward Dad. I advise everyone in this room not to pressure Savannah to sign anything tonight or at any point outside of proper legal process, he said. Any further attempts to transfer protected assets without approval will be documented. Dad laughed under his breath. Are you threatening me at my daughter's engagement dinner? I am advising you at the event where you made an unauthorized announcement about restricted trust assets. Adam finally spoke. His voice was quiet. Caroline, did you ask him to make the announcement tonight? Caroline looked at him like he had betrayed her by asking the obvious. Adam, not now. His father cleared his throat. I think now is exactly when he should ask. That was the moment Caroline understood that the room she had staged as a coronation had turned into a witness stand, even without a judge. I didn't stay for dessert. I gathered the folder, my purse, and the copy of Dad's speech, which I took from the table while he was too busy glaring at Mr. Harlan to stop me. Dad saw me pick it up. That is mine. It mentions me, I said. I'll keep a copy. You are not welcome to weaponize this family. I looked around the room at the flowers, the framed photos, the champagne glasses, the relatives who had smiled too hard while Dad aimed a joke at me like a dart. I'm not taking Caroline's spotlight, I said. I'm stopping you from turning Grandpa's trust into a party favor. Then I left. Aunt Lisa followed me into the hallway. For a second I thought she was going to ask me to go back in to smooth it over to consider the timing. Instead she hugged me once hard. I'm sorry, she said. I believed your mother for too long. That almost broke me more than anything else had. I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. Mr. Harlan came out a moment later, carrying a second envelope. Henry wanted you to have the original letter privately, he said. The copy in the folder is for the record. Read this when you're alone. I took it carefully. Did he know? I asked. Mr. Harlan's expression softened for the first time. He knew enough. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on music. I kept seeing Caroline's face when I read her text. Not guilt. Anger. As if my real betrayal was refusing to stay in the role she had assigned me. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up. The family group chat was called The Crew, because apparently even passive-aggressive relatives need branding. Dad wrote first. Savannah, delete any documents you plan to send. You have done enough damage. Mom wrote seconds later. This is not how family handles pain. Caroline followed. You are obsessed with making me look bad. A cousin sent. Can someone explain what just happened? Then Uncle Rob. I would also like to know whether Martin had authority to promise Dad's car. Dad responded. This is not a group discussion. My hands hovered over the screen. The old Savannah would have written 3 paragraphs trying to make them understand my feelings. The old Savannah would have softened every sentence so Mom wouldn't cry and Dad wouldn't explode and Caroline could still pretend she was the injured party. I opened my laptop instead. I scanned the redacted trust summary Mr. Harlan had already prepared. I attached the insurance timeline, the payment confirmation, the relevant title restriction note, the screenshot of Caroline's text with phone numbers redacted, Mom's text about not ruining Caroline's moment, and a photo of Dad's highlighted speech. Then I wrote one message. Since several people witnessed Dad's announcement tonight, I'm attaching a redacted summary of the trust restrictions and the timeline Mr. Harlan referenced. I will not discuss protected assets privately or sign anything outside the proper legal process. Future questions about trust assets can go through Mr. Harlan. I will not respond to pressure texts. I sent it before I could talk myself into making it gentler. For almost a full minute, nobody replied. Then Dad wrote, "Delete this immediately." Mom wrote, "Savannah, please. This is cruel." Caroline wrote, "I hope you're proud of yourself." Aunt Lisa replied before I could. "No. Martin made the announcement publicly. The correction can be public too." Then another cousin wrote, "I saw the speech. The grocery bag line was not okay." Uncle Rob wrote, "I want to speak with Harlan." Dad wrote, "Nobody is speaking to anyone until I say so." Aunt Lisa replied, "Martin, that is the problem." I turned off notifications. That small act felt better than any speech I had given all night. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It spread in the slower, uglier way family consequences usually do. The next morning I had 4 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Caroline, and 1 from a number I recognized as Adam's. He didn't leave a voicemail. Caroline did. "I hope humiliating me was worth it," she said, her voice tight and breathy. "You have no idea what you've done. Adam's parents are asking questions. Adam is acting like I lied to him. You couldn't let me have one night. One night, Savannah. You always do this." For once, I didn't answer fast enough to make her feel better. Dad's voicemail was shorter. "You have embarrassed this family. You will call me today, and you will not hide behind that lawyer." I saved it and forwarded it to Mr. Harlan. Then I wrote Dad 1 sentence by email, copying Mr. Harlan. "No, Dad. I stopped helping you hide what embarrassed it." He didn't respond to that email. Mom left the longest messages. Of course she did. "Sweetheart, I know last night hurt you. But you have to understand your father feels cornered. You know how he gets when he feels cornered. I was trying to keep things from falling apart. Caroline is devastated. Adam barely spoke to her after everyone left. Please call me. I don't want lawyers between us. I want my daughter." I listened to it once while standing at my kitchen counter, still in the wrinkled dress from the night before because I'd fallen asleep on the couch for 3 hours and woken up with my phone under my shoulder. Then I typed, "I will speak with you when you can discuss what happened without asking me to protect everyone from the truth. Until then, trust assets go through Mr. Harlan, and personal conversations need to stay respectful. I will end any call that becomes a guilt trip." She replied with a broken heart emoji. I didn't answer. Mr. Harlan emailed later that day confirming that he had documented Dad's public statement, the attempted pressure around transfer documents, and the family chat messages demanding deletion. He reminded all involved parties that the protected assets could not be transferred, sold, retitled, or pledged without the required process. He also wrote that any effort to coerce me into signing would be added to the file. It was formal and dry and beautiful. Dad hated it. For the first time in my life, Dad had to argue with a record instead of a daughter. Over the next week, relatives who had spent years giving me tight smiles started texting careful little messages. I didn't know all that. "Your dad shouldn't have said it that way. I hope you're okay." Some were genuine. Some were reputation management. Some were fishing for more details. I answered very few. Aunt Lisa called once, asked if I wanted her to come over, and accepted it when I said no. "I'm here," she said. "And Savannah?" I meant what I said. This needed to be said. That helped more than she probably knew. Caroline's world shifted in quieter ways. Nobody posted pictures from the engagement dinner except one distant aunt who had left before the toast. The dessert table full of little cookies shaped like rings never made it to social media. Adam and Caroline didn't break up in some dramatic scene, at least not right away. But I heard through Aunt Lisa that he asked her what she knew and when she knew it. His parents became busy. When Mom tried to schedule a follow-up brunch, Caroline texted me several times. "You made me look like a gold digger." I didn't respond. "You know Dad exaggerates when he talks." I didn't respond. "Grandpa would be ashamed of you." That one almost got me. Not because I believed it, but because she knew exactly which knife to reach for. I opened Grandpa's envelope instead. I had waited 3 days to read the original letter. I told myself I was too tired, too busy, too overwhelmed. The truth was, part of me was afraid. It's one thing to have legal documents prove authority. It's another thing to hear love from someone you can't answer. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee I had reheated twice and opened the envelope carefully. Grandpa's handwriting was exactly as I remembered. Firm, slightly slanted, impatient with unnecessary loops. There was a faint coffee stain in one corner, which made me smile through the tightness in my throat. Grandpa had never kept coffee away from paperwork, no matter how many times Grandma used to scold him. The letter began with my name, Savannah. If you're reading this because the folder had to be opened, then somebody tried to turn what I built into a trophy instead of a responsibility. I am sorry for that, but I am not surprised. I had to stop there for a moment. Then I kept reading. He wrote that he had watched me notice things other people dismissed. He wrote about the insurance renewal, the property fee, the corrected title note, the time I asked why a distribution schedule didn't match the trust summary, and Dad told me I was being dramatic. Grandpa had seen that too. He wrote, people will call you difficult when they benefit from you being easy to ignore. I pressed my hand over my mouth. He wrote that he wasn't leaving me oversight because I was his favorite, or because he wanted me to punish anyone. He wrote that he trusted me because I respected both people and paper. That sentence undid me. Not because it was poetic, because it was precise. I had spent years being told that caring about details meant I cared less about family. Grandpa understood that sometimes the details are how you protect the family from itself. The last paragraph was short. You were never the dumb one. You were the one who read before signing, listened before speaking, and noticed before damage became permanent. Do not let loud people convince you that volume is the same as judgment. Protect the lake house. Protect the car. Protect yourself too. I cried then. Not pretty crying. Not movie crying. The kind where your face folds and you make a sound you would be embarrassed for anyone else to hear. But nobody was there to tell me I was overreacting. Nobody was there to ask me to calm down for the sake of someone who had hurt me. I let myself cry until the coffee went cold again. After that, things became very simple. Not easy. Simple. I kept my role as overseer of the protected assets. I didn't try to take Caroline's designated share. I didn't want everything, and I never had. I wanted the truth to stop being treated like an attack. When Dad's attorney requested a family conversation, without Mr. Harlan present, I declined in writing. When Mom asked if we could have lunch just as mother and daughter, I said yes, but only after she acknowledged in writing that trust assets would not be discussed. She said that felt cold. I said cold was still warmer than being ambushed. She canceled lunch. Caroline sent one final message a few weeks later. You won. Hope it was worth losing your sister. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. I didn't win. I stopped losing on purpose. She didn't answer. Dad's control over the family didn't vanish overnight. People like my father don't wake up one morning and become humble because a folder embarrassed them. But something had cracked. Relatives asked questions now. Aunt Lisa refused to let Mom rewrite the dinner as Savannah's outburst. Uncle Rob contacted Mr. Harlan directly about the car restrictions. Adam's parents stopped letting Mom frame it as a misunderstanding. And Dad had to say the words he hated most. Talk to the attorney. The lake house stayed protected. The car stayed under the restrictions Grandpa wanted. The trust moved forward through the legal process instead of through Dad's dinner speech. Caroline remained entitled to what was actually hers, but not to what Dad had tried to hand her for applause. As for me, I stopped answering calls that began with sighs. I stopped explaining my tone to people who ignored the content. I stopped rushing to make Caroline comfortable after she cut me, and then complained about the blood. Sometimes I still wonder if the timing was brutal. It was Caroline's engagement dinner. There were flowers, menu cards, future in-laws, relatives taking photos, and two families trying to celebrate a marriage. I know what it looked like when I opened that folder. I know people will say there had to have been a better moment. But I didn't choose that stage. Dad did, when he turned a toast into a transfer announcement. Mom did, when she told me not to make a scene instead of telling him not to humiliate me. Caroline did, when she pushed for a public announcement because she thought I would be too ashamed to object. All I did was stop playing the part they had written for me. I didn't become the favorite that night. I became the person they could not lie about anymore. They spent my whole life calling me too simple to understand the room. Turns out I was the only one who understood the paperwork. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.